Parliamentary Opposition Press Conference for March 28, 2025. I am your moderator, Shanika Haynes. Joining today's presser is Mr. Aubrey C. Norton, Member of Parliament, Leader of the PNCR and Parliamentary Opposition. Today's press statement will be read by the leader.
Heroes Highway was built by PPP favorite contractors under the PPP and not the coalition government. The opposition notes with great concern an ill-informed comment that the construction of the Heroes Highway was undertaken by the APNU AFC government. It must be stated that this claim is totally untrue. The Heroes Highway was constructed by 12 contractors that are favorites of the PPP regime. We agree with U.S. Secretary of State Mr. Marco Rubio that the road was poorly done. In fact, in my budget presentation, this fact was underscored when I described the road as an abortion road and stated clearly that it was of poor quality and a reflection of PPP corruption and incompetence. We sense that it might have been the government of Guyana that provided this false information. Whether it is the government or not, the government must take full responsibility for the construction disaster they call Heroes Highway and correct the misinformation that is in the public domain. The Secretary of State must be made aware that it is not the worst that the regime has built. Schooner to Crane Road is worse. The Linden toll bridge fiasco is a manifestation of the high-handedness of the PPP government. The PPP government has acceded to the demand of the Linden Town Council to meet to discuss the implications and complications of removing the Wismar Bridge toll. Any competent and impartial government would have itself initiated such a meeting months ago. But as always, the PPP prefers not only to act without planning, but also to seek to undermine and circumvent opposition-controlled local government councils. Such tactics will continue to fail as the people in these municipalities and neighborhoods see through and reject the PPP's political ploys. Let us be clear. Neither the Linden Town Council nor the PNCR/APNU opposes the removal of the bridge tolls. While we see such moves as typical PPP electioneering and political gimmickry, any financial relief to the people is their fair and deserved entitlement. What we do oppose is the absence of any communication from the government of how it will compensate the Linden Town Council for the projected annual shortfall of over $70 million. A decision on the bridge toll should have been made after full consultation with all stakeholders, particularly the Linden Town Council, to address and resolve all legitimate concerns. However, no one is surprised that the PPP chooses to bulldoze its way through. Lindeners and all Guyanese know that the shortfall in revenue caused by the removal of the bridge toll will mean that the Linden Town Council would be unable to perform several critical functions in the municipality, such as garbage collection, maintenance of roads and drains, and the provision of other services. As the Linden Town Council press release pointed out, it is already handicapped by a shortfall of 50% of the staff. Therefore, many Lindeners are asking what the net gain is in removing the bridge toll when it would worsen their living conditions in their streets and communities if the government fails to provide them with the necessary funds. A serious and thoughtful government will ensure that there will be no collateral damage or dire consequences that will nullify any benefits or relief to citizens. However, the PPP is too crass to be that kind of government. We can, who can doubt that had this matter affected a PPP controlled municipality or NDC or NDC, its attitude would have been more helpful. It is opposite to note that in the case of the Berbice River Bridge, PPP favorites will be paid off for their investment in this bridge. The money was placed in the 2025 budget. We in the PNCR/APNU, therefore, will monitor the outcome of the Linden Town Council government meeting. We demand that decisions are taken quickly and in the best interest of the people of Linden and their elected representatives. We support today's organized protests against the Commissioner of Information. We wish to voice our support for the protests today planned by citizens against the lack of access to information in Guyana. This protest, we understand, is to be staged in front of the office of the Commissioner of Information. The Commissioner of Information, Charles Ramson Sr., unwillingness to provide the public with information is an integral part of the PPP government's effort to undermine transparency and accountability and the right of citizens to know and be properly informed. We too have had bad encounters with Commissioner Ramson. On the 16th February 2023, as leader of the opposition, I dispatched a request for access to official documents under the Access to Information Act 2011. This was delivered to Commissioner Ramson, requesting the radio and television program logs of the National Communication Network, showing its coverage of that year's budget debate in the National Assembly. Our request was triggered by NCN's blatant one-sided coverage of budget debates, where it carries mostly the presentations of PPP MPs. The request was refused. The Commissioner's absurd response to our legitimate request prompted us to publicly declare then, and I quote, Mr. Ramson's continued occupation of the position renders the office useless, a waste of public funds, and a disservice to the people of Guyana. Today, we still hold this view. A properly functioning, competent office of the Commissioner of Information is a critical agent of change on behalf of the people. More so, at a time when the PPP regime is becoming more disdainful of the public and the parliament, is becoming more secretive, is becoming less accountable, and is more incompetent and corrupt. There is therefore need for a proper Commissioner of Information. PPP's increasing desperation threatens political stability and human rights of citizens. As elections draw nearer, there are increasing signs of desperation from the PPP regime as it faces certain electoral defeat. Its refusal to ensure a clean voters list and implement biometrics are clear indications of their fear that they will be removed from government if there are free, fair, and credible elections. Abuses of the constitutional rights and freedom of citizens are becoming more evident and more frequent. Attempts at intimidation of opposition figures have increased. The deployment of state agencies such as the police force and the GRA for clear political ends is becoming more blatant. These actions by the PPP are fostering social unease and political instability in the country. Guyanese must raise their voices and call on the PPP regime to cease and desist. We in the opposition will continue to defend and protect the interests of citizens and our country. Let us, as a nation, unite to stop political intimidation and victimization and condemn PPP political violence. Guyana and Guyanese deserve a far better lease on life. Guyanese deserve a government that respects and guarantees their rights, freedoms, aspiration, and dignities. Guyanese should therefore reject the PPP government that sees itself as above the law and as beholden to no one but itself. Let us keep vigil for a few more months. These dark hours will soon end. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will open the floor for questions on the press statement.
Good morning, Adam Harris here.
Good morning.
Morning, Adam.
Now, currently you were talking about the Heroes Highway, this concussion road, and you said that Marco Rubio actually blamed the government. My question is, was the Secretary of State briefed to arrive at that conclusion? If not, is the Secretary of State lobbying for the present government by casting a problem created by the government on the opposition?
There are a number of possibilities. I can't pronounce affirmatively on all. What I can say is this: there's a possibility that the government itself, in its usual approach of blaming the opposition, would have told them that. First thing. The second thing, there's a possibility that he might not have been briefed. I don't see him as lobbying for the government. I believe that the United States is very clear that this government is a corrupt, incompetent government, and I don't see them lobbying for them, though I see people in the government lobbying the Secretary of State.
Thank you.
And the next question I want to answer, the Secretary of State paid a visit to Guyana. Now, generally, all sides should be involved. In the US, for example, Congress and all of them are involved whenever there is a state visit or anything of the sort. Was the opposition notified about Rubio's visit? Was there an attempt by anyone from the visiting team to reach out to the opposition?
Not to my knowledge. What I did say to people when I was asked that I had seen the focus to be on defense and energy, and therefore I thought they were more inclined to meet the government than the opposition. And I know that they are fully aware of many of the concerns of the opposition. And I will add as well that it was a very short visit.
All right, I'll open the floor and we'll do one question at a time. I have one in house and then I'll come back to you, Mr. Harris, and then Miss Davina.
Somebody?
Yes, one.
Yeah, somebody.
Yes.
All right, one.
Good morning, Trina Williams, Ghana Chronicle. Mr. Norton, there has been widespread reports of a growing partnership between the AFC and the Mohammeds. Would the PNC be willing to join this team, or if this is indeed the case, or does your party see this partnership as a deliberate attempt to make the AFC seem more formidable than the PNC? And could I get an update on the talks with AFC? I know that the deadline is the 31st of March.
Thanks for your question. Let me start with the last one first. The talks are ongoing. As it relates to the, I don't know if they met with the AFC. One theory says they met with the AFC. Another theory says he met with the lawyers who happen to be AFC. That's their business. I really don't know. As for us, we analyze political situations and we will determine who we need to engage, if we need to engage them, and when we need to engage them. But so far, we have not agreed to engage any of the names mentioned.
Thank you. Mr. Adam Harris,
Yes, sorry.
go ahead.
I wanted to talk to about this toll situation, sir. You said that by removing the toll, the government will pay the friends or whoever helped construct that Bordeaux River Bridge so that they will not be indebted. Do you foresee a similar action for the Linden toll bridge?
Well,
Not in the terms of payment,
no, the Linden Bridge was built at a different time in different circumstances. The Berbice River Bridge from the inception was corruption. You know what happened with the group at NBS. So it's in a different category. Now, the Berbice River Bridge, you know, the partners there are friends, families, and favorites of the PPP. And so we know, and we saw in the last budget money that was placed there, and we are well aware that they have been trying their best to pay them off. And we think that that is what they set out to do. Pay them off so their friends, families, and favorites can have money. I don't believe any feasibility study was done on the action. But like we said, we welcome any action to bring relief to the people of Guyana. Having said that, we do believe it should be done properly based on a plan rather than this political gimmicking that we're seeing here.
Thank you. Ms. Davina Bagat.
Hi, good morning. This is Davina Bagat with Kite News. Mr. Norman, my question is on the talks between yourself, well, the PNCR, APNU, and the EFC. I'd like you to be a little bit more specific, if you can, with regard to whether the two sides have agreed on coalescing ahead of this year's elections.
And there's a saying which says nothing is agreed until everything is agreed.
Okay, so it's likely that you guys are going to wait until the 31st of March to make that official announcement?
Well, I don't want to. Even the 31st of March isn't written in stone. I would say we will continue to negotiate with an open mind. Hopefully, we will get through it by the 31st. But if we do not, it doesn't follow that that ends everything. And that will be a decision of the two sides.
So far, are you optimistic or are you hopeful that there would be a coalition?
I have always been an eternal optimist. On this occasion, I must say I'm optimistic. But in every optimism, you know, there are specks of pessimism, and you just hope that optimism triumphs over pessimism.
Thank you for that. And right now, would you say, like, how are talks going between the two sides? Are you on the same side, so to speak, or are there still differences you're working out? Have you reached any agreements? And can you just elaborate on some of those, please?
I've said to you, an agreement like this, nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. You know, in a negotiation, you might be talking about one thing and you succeed with it, but then you go to another issue and it hinges on that previous one, and therefore it can affect that one. So really, to speak on any issue that isn't completed as part of the negotiation, I think would be not the best thing to do.
Mr. Norton, a follow-up on what you previously said. Several persons have shared the view that the PNC would stand a better chance if they enter the elections alone. Is this something that the party is considering? I know you just said that.
Thanks for your question. As a political party, We listen to the views of people, we engage, but we make the decision at the right time based on the reality. Um, there are obviously people who believe that we can do it alone. There are people who believe we don't. We have to analyze the situation and then arrive at the best conclusion in the interest of our party and the people of Guyana.
And just a quick question for me. Last week we saw reports that Elson Lowe has been fingered, or
I didn't hear that.
Elson Lowe as presidential candidate. Would you support that?
Well, I'm in no position to support or deny. My party has decided at our Congress that I will be the presidential candidate.
Thank you. The floor is.
A quick question on
Go ahead.
something that's very, very topical. We talked about, and I'll have a follow-up, please, if I'm allowed.
You can go
We
ahead.
talked about these undocumented migrants being employed. We had a situation at Linden. Then the minister talked about what's happening at Bakewell and all of that. Has there been a move by the opposition, forget the charges about xenophobia and all of that, to ensure that the rules of law are adhered to? That undocumented people shouldn't be working unless they get a work permit.
Thank you for your question. It is far more complex than that, Adam. This government is illegally giving people, registering them, giving them birth certificates. And so you will find a lot of people out there who are not entitled to having the documentation, and therefore they can get a job. It's unfortunate. I recall that in the last budget debate, the one in 2024, the Shadow Minister, Attorney General and Legal Affairs, called for a comprehensive approach to the migration issue. The government hasn't responded. We will continue. You're aware that we have a case in the court that bears some kind of a relationship to that matter. We will continue to press for the implementation of the laws. But you know, the government is lawless. They don't believe in the rule of law. And one has to plan cognizant of that fact.
You said you had a follow-up, Mr. Harris.
Well, another
Go ahead.
question really.
Go ahead.
You know, there's a lot of talk that Member of Parliament Amanzo Walton Desir is being sidelined, being ignored when it comes to meeting that has a bearing on foreign affairs. What is the relationship between the party leadership and Ms. Amanzo Walton Desir at this time?
Well, I don't know how you can say that, but I mean, everybody's free to arrive at a conclusion. But Adam, when I meet the president on the Ghana-Venezuela territorial controversy, I took Amanzo Walton with me. Secondly, if I'm meeting as party leader, Amanzo is not a member of the executive. She's not at present a senior member of the party. And when I meet as a leader of the PNCR, some cases I'm invited as leader of the PNCR. In fact, when I met recently with the Canadian High Commission, it was addressed to the PNCR, and we also did some discussion on parliamentary matters. And so I would say to you that the team you see me carry to those activities are reflective of the persons in the party who are involved in elements of foreign policy and foreign policy formulation.
But the party has an excellent relationship with Ms. Amanzo Walton Desir. You conclude that, sir?
I am not in a position to say whether it is excellent or not. What I can say is the party has no problem with Amanzo Walton. In fact, more than once I would have reached out to Amanzo.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah. Sorry for hogging it.
Go ahead.
Well,
Sorry.
you're not hogging it if it's you alone asking.
All right.
Go ahead.
Now look, we got a lot of talk about And that's going around, because the Americans want us to get rid of the Cuban Brigade, the people who've more or less been propping up our health support system. I didn't hear anything on that during his visit, and I think Rubio himself said he wasn't discussing anything about Cuba. But do you see Guyana bowing to US pressure to get rid of the Cuban Medical Brigade?
Were this government a proper government operating diplomatically, the first thing they would have done was to carve the argument for why you need the Cuban doctors. And in some regard, do what Jamaica did. Establish that under the rules you engage these doctors, there can be no contention of trafficking. You also would have been pointing out to the Americans that the Cuban doctors have been critical to the Guyana medical system and many others in Latin America and the Caribbean. The task of a country is to pursue its interests, not to buckle to anybody. And so if they were pursuing our interests, they would have articulated a clear position that says, one, the doctors are pivotal. Two, in our case, we are not involved in any trafficking. Three, we understand the concerns of the United States, but it doesn't fit us at this stage. And therefore, we will implore on the United States to understand our concern and position and point out that we have had fraternal relations with Cuba over the years. And may I point out, just for the sake of historical context, when we developed relations with Cuba and China in 1972, it was amidst a rapprochement between East and West. And so all of those factors should be taken into consideration.
Thank you. Ms. Davina Bakat?
Thank you. Mr. Norton, over the past week or so, we've seen Exxon Mobile hosting a series of consultations with the public on its eighth planned project. This is the long tail development. However, at the meetings we have attended so far, we've seen no opposition MPs. Is there a reason for this? And do you believe that opposition MPs should be present at these meetings to sort of add a stronger layer of scrutiny to these projects?
Well, I don't know that the presence of opposition MPs will add a layer of scrutiny. We have been engaging Exxon Mobile as a political institution. In fact, we are scheduled to do another engagement, and our concerns are made there. You must remember that we are a government in waiting, and therefore we have to operate in a certain way that allows us to engage Exxon Mobile and make the changes we think necessary to give Guyanese a better future.
Thank you.
So you don't believe that by attending these meetings, the opposition will be doing any good, any additional good that is beyond those closed door meetings with Exxon?
I don't know that how you arrive at that conclusion, but surely that is not what I intended.
No, I'm asking a question, actually. I'm asking a question.
Well, I believe that opposition MPs could attend. It is their decision if they want to attend. I do believe if they attend, they can impact the discussion. But I don't know that the non-attendance affect the discussions. And may I say to you, there are people who attend who are affiliated with our party. I must also point out to you that MPs are only one layer of involvement in a political process. There are many people who are involved politically that attend, but not necessarily in their political capacity.
Thank you. All right.
There is a lot of fuss about the Mohammeds. I notice whenever Azruddin Mohammed goes to a community, there is a PPP reaction. a hostile reaction, I could say. Has your party experienced a similar reaction when you go to PPP areas?
Well, I think what has happened here, Adam, let me say thanks for the question, but let me tell you what I think has happened here. I think when we went, to instance, to Champagne, they targeted the persons who engaged us. In fact, in one case, they tried to trump up a cyber crime for one of them. So they have always been attacking. What is new is that more of their supporters are coming out and being openly anti-PPP, and therefore they see it more as a threat. But this question of harassment and violence on the part of the PPP has always been there. What is happening with Mohammed is that he constitutes a new threat to the PPP, and they are retaliating with open violence. Whereas in our case, they tend to be more subtle and harass the people that you engage. I recall a particular man who is of Indo-Guyanese descent began supporting us openly, and the PPP did things like having the neighbors call and say he did X or Y, and then the police would come and harass him, and then he says, look, leader, I am going to support, but I'm tired of them harassing me. So it's just a change in the approach that you have here.
One last question from me. The court case, Ms. Rasool presented some interesting comments during the elections trial. For example, she said that the PNCR, AFC, invigilate, call them what you like, abandoned the statements of poll for some 30 minutes. Did you get a report that happened, that the statements were left exposed? And did you also get the impression that the PPP would have tampered with those statements of poll ahead of the final count?
I put nothing above the PPP. If they tamper with people who had just supported them, but just give an indication that they no longer support them, they can go after them in a vicious way. What do you think they will do with people who have been opposing them all the years? I was not in the room, but I will always resort to the recount. The recount showed clearly that the chief riggers were the People's Progressive Party. All this witness is doing is confirming what we knew from the recount.
Thank you very much. With there being no other questions, I want to thank our media personnel for joining today's presser, and of course our viewing audience on all our social media platforms. We do hope you have a wonderful weekend.